Well, thank you so much for hosting us here today. I'll start with a quick introduction on my side. My name is Oliver, investor of our Munich office of UVC Partners. Thank you for the very kind introduction. We're actually a hardware and software investor. Usually I need to explain that we also invest in hardware, which is not a typical...
Hardware goes without software.
Exactly. So we are an early stage VC fund located in Germany. We have two offices, one in Munich, one in Berlin. We invest in very early stages, so pre-seed, seed, Series A of European technology startups. So for us, this means basically anything around mobility, be it mobility technology as today, be it mobility concepts. For instance, we were first investors in Flixbus or also FinAuto, which present here later today. We do quite a bit in sustainability. So for us, that's a huge important topic. And especially here we get into hardware. I think software alone probably will not fix the climate crisis. And then, of course, we also do regular software investments and, to be honest, also quite a bit of deep tech. So if you're an early stage B2B founder in that field, let us know. More than happy to talk. Today, I have the pleasure to be here together with Felix from DeepDrive. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Very happy to be here. My name is Felix. I'm founder of DeepDrive. We developed a new type of electric motor technology, a new way of how to build electric motors, which is much more efficient, much more energy efficient, and much cheaper. I think the overall trend, the overall theme is electrification in many markets, most prevalent in the automotive industry, which is actually a huge thing, right? Many of you will probably start driving electric vehicles. Now, it comes with completely new requirements, and there has been a lot of focus on energy storage and energy generation. We've heard a bit about this morning already, but there hasn't been that much focus on how the energy is turned into motion. You know, the core of electrification is the electric motor, and there hasn't been that much going on. The technology stayed pretty stable over the last couple of years, and there was a lot of room, or there is a lot of room for improvements, and especially with putting electric motors in everything, you need not only the lowest cost electric motors producible at scale, but especially the most energy efficient ones. And this is what our technology does. Our motor allows us to improve the efficiency of electric vehicles. Our core industry is the automotive industry for now. Increase the range of electric vehicles by more than 20%, and significantly reduces therefore the cost of how much you will pay for your new Tesla or similar electric motor.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction. Let me ask the obvious question up front, like how does this work? Like when I first heard about DeepDrive making electric motors more efficient, I thought about like this is an industry that has been optimizing electric motors for decades. I know you come along, fresh startup from Munich, and you seem to revolutionize it. So what's the secret sauce here?
So I think there's been a lot of focus on batteries. There's been a lot of focus on many different areas of the electric vehicle. On the motor, not enough. There hasn't been enough investments. And then if you look at the automotive industry structurally, you have the problem that these automakers and these tier one suppliers that build this technology, they're used to building generation 20, 21, 22, right? They've been innovating in generations over decades. But starting from scratch, building a completely new type of product is something they're structurally very much struggling with. And that's the first part. The second part is you need a very diverse skill set, and you need to break out of these old structures, and that's exactly what we did. So we got the experts from all over the industry, some of the leaders in the development of electric motors, and really we're just in the first or in the second real generation of electric motors out there. And what our technology does really is building, rethinking how electric motors generally are built. And that allows us to create a system which is very easy and cheap to produce at scale. It always needs to be at scale, otherwise it doesn't work in the automotive industry. But at the same time, it's incredibly energy efficient, so saves these 20% energy efficiency.
So you just started quantifying it a little bit, 20%. Can we maybe talk numbers a little bit? So what does this mean? Let's say you finally developed your electric motor, let's say to series production. It gets, I don't know, built into mass manufacturing of cars. What's the effect? What's the effect for the OEM? What's the effect for society? What's the effect for a driver? What's the effect for environment? Can you give me a couple of numbers on that?
So we basically enable at scale electric vehicles with 800 to 1,000 kilometers of range, right? This is needed to be competitive versus combustion vehicles. The second point is with 20% more energy efficiency for the same range, you can build a 20% smaller battery. So there's a huge impact on the overall cost of electric vehicles. Now, taking that together, and that's not a number coming from us, but from one of our OEM customers, an automaker deploying the DeepDrive technology across their vehicle fleet save around $1 billion in costs, in production costs of their electric motor. And this is just the start, right? We facilitate the mass adoption of electric vehicles by being able to provide the customer with much more range, much more flexibility, and a price point which kind of like closes the gap between today's combustion and electric vehicles.
And when you talk about, let's say, the environmental impact, if you scale it maybe up to, let's say, the overall fleet of electric cars that we expect over the next decades, can you quantify the effect of that?
So there's two main effects. The first effect is obviously the speed up of the mass adoption of EVs in general, and the second point is just compared to the state of the RDVs today. So talking the Tesla Model 3, very, very energy efficient car, we save around 5 tons of CO2 emissions per year per vehicle. So a huge impact that taken over the whole fleet is hundreds of megatons of CO2 savings over the next decades per year. And the effect of this is just tremendous. Right?
Like all of this, of course, sounds fantastic, but then here's a question that always puzzled me, especially before we invested, right? It's like, what kind of company are you actually building there? I mean, like, it seems like such a hard industry to disrupt. There's very few examples, Tesla maybe being the only prominent one. Like, what kind of company are you building up? Like, how can a startup disrupt the automotive industry, especially like when it comes to, let's say, the core of automotive, the motor itself, and what would your business model look like?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. Like, if you start building a company from scratch and think about an interesting industry where you get easy investment, right, you wouldn't come up with the automotive industry. The main point here is that you have to imagine these automakers. They are looking for savings in €1, €5, €10, because that makes all the difference if you produce 1 million cars a year. Our technology lets them save thousands of euros, and that with much higher efficiency. So the market is huge, and the opportunity is very clear. Now the question is, how do you build a successful company with that? And the big problem is that we won't become the next Bosch. We don't want to. It's a lot of capex investments, it's very capital intensive, and also the margins are not great. So the business model we devised is a mix of a licensing, where we actually license our technology of an industrialized product. So we do all the process development in-house on our sample lines. We license that out to the OEMs, so we can tell the OEMs, look, you can produce yourself. You can utilize your existing plants. We scale on existing footprint. At the same time, we build the core IP subcomponent, approximately a quarter of the value, ourselves. And what that results in is a business which has a huge potential. We work with 8 of the 10 largest automakers in the world. Nearly all of our pipeline, all projects in our pipeline have revenues of 100 million to €1 billion for us, right? It's huge projects.
Is that with a single project?
With a single project, 100 million to $1 billion in revenue, because these volumes are just crazy. And at the same time, we build a business because of this licensing part with a gross margin of more than 50%. And in that way, you build a very scalable, still very defensible business with very attractive margins as well.
Well, thank you so much for outlining that. I mean, like, for me, especially like as an early stage VC, like the main question that always pops up in my head if I hear a story like this is, all right, this sounds great, but how do you get there? Like, how do you de-risk it? So maybe you can also help like translate a little bit from an investor's perspective. How do you have to think about such a startup? How do you think about, I don't know, breaking it down into milestones, kind of like de-risking that path to that potential success that you just outlined? And what should I don't know, like a new investor look for, kind of like to evaluate you in that sense, de-risk that story a little bit?
So a big part obviously is, does the tech work? Does the tech check out? The other part is obviously customer traction, right? There's very clear proof points. Who do you speak to? The LOIs you get. Do you get design into serious productions? All these.
Can you talk about traction today a little bit?
Yeah, so we work with 8 of the 10 largest automakers in the world. We are in co-development projects with many of them. We are approximately 6 to 12 months away from first large-scale serious commitments. So we're building up demonstration vehicles with them, and so on and so on. So we have a very clear path towards the first large-scale project, and with the first project, we are in an order book of $500 million. Now, I'm convinced that the new companies of tomorrow are not the ones that build their success alone overnight, but that are partnering with exciting existing industrial companies we have here in Germany. And I think a big part of that is our partnerships, for example, with Continental. BMW is invested in us. That helps tremendously.
All right, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I think you'll still be around a little bit. So if anyone has questions, grab Felix. He'll be outside. Thank you so
very
much.
much.